Come on. All right, there we go. Welcome everybody to the February 27th Cloud Events Serverless Working Group call. Let's see. Okay, got 6 people. Cool. All right, let's jump right into it. Manuel's not here. I don't think he has anything to talk about relative to the KubeCon coming up, other than I think he started putting together his presentation. So hopefully he'll share that with us when he's ready and let us review it. And hey, Mark.
Hi, Doug.
Uh, Still looking for volunteers for KubeCon India. We have a little bit of time, but it is coming up fast. So let me know if you want to do it or you know anybody. And I think that's about it. Any agenda items people want to add before we jump into the really one PR that we have? All right, let's jump right into it. Another Xreg one. All right, I did a lot of cleanup for consistency because some of the changes kind of hit large areas of the spec. And while I was in there, I noticed some inconsistencies, so I fixed those. I forgot to add Manuel to the contributors doc that we have, so I apologize to Manuel for that, but I got him back in there now. There were some minor tweaks to our tooling. This one was kind of interesting, just pointed out. Apparently, Twitter decided to add HTTP headers in just a simple get that are over 8,000 characters long. And apparently Python does not like that by default, at least the Python package we're using. And I know nothing about Python. It took me forever to figure out what the heck was going on. But it's interesting that someone's actually generating an HTTP header with over 9,000 characters in it. So I just thought that was interesting. So I needed to figure out how to make Python support that. So that was kind of neat. Anyway, trivia. Okay. We made a change so that attributes that have default values must be serialized by servers. What this basically means is when a client updates a resource, it has an attribute, whether it's required or not. If it has a default value assigned to that attribute, the server is required to fill in that value with the attributes and therefore serialize it in the response. Okay. Now, as of today, what that also does is it turns on or requires you to turn on the server required equals true. And server required basically means, hey, clients, if you're interested, this attribute will always be there. That's why it's tagged as server required. The server is required to serialize it. This actually is going to change next week, just as a heads up, because we realize there are situations where it's possible that you have a default value, but server required can't be true because old versions of this resource may not actually have that default value set, because setting a default value only applies from this point going forward. Existing entities that don't have that default value or don't have that attribute actually set, they're not going to have their value magically go from null to being set. So it's only going forward. Therefore, server required can't be turned on. So that's going to get removed next week. But as of right now, it's still in there. They want to make a last minute change. We do not allow you to change the default values for spec-defined attributes. That way we have interoperability and consistency. However, extensions are allowed to have their default value changed unless the spec that defines that extension says you can't. Okay. For filters, before this week, we had the equals operator, which obviously checks to see if that attribute you're looking for actually matches the value. We decided to add not equal for completeness. And if you use a value of null, that is the equivalent of basically saying, hey, is this attribute absent? So if I say, for example, filter foo equals null, like here, that's saying find all entities whose foo attribute is absent or null. Okay. Now, as we were discussing that, we then realized, well, there's a little bit of potential confusion around what happens in cases like this, where you say, okay, I only want entities that have a my OBJ object, and inside there do not have an attribute set to 5. And that's easy enough to kind of understand in English. But what happens if my OBJ itself is not set, right? Does this still return false, or does it still return true? And so we decided to do is say, yes, it will still return true because this is equivalent to this. And this part is going to be false if either attribute is not 5 or my OBJ is missing entirely. Okay, so just added some more clarity there. For the capabilities question mark offer flag, which means show me all the, not the capabilities as they're currently set, but what are the allowable values for each capability so I know what I can set them to. We just changed the format of that to be a little bit more expressive and give a little more detail. And that's about it. I don't think there's anything really major in all this stuff. I think a lot of it is more just cleanup more than anything else. Maybe the default value stuff is a little bit new, but I think that's about it. Any questions on any of those, or do you want me to go into more detail? Any concerns? Okay. In case John does listen to the recording, thank you, John, for doing your usual skimming of it. He had a couple minor little tweaks um, to be made, and I think that's about it. Okay, with that, any objection to approving? Cool. Thank you all for listening to me ramble. All right, Ben is not on the call, so he still can't talk about his issue. He mentioned that a couple weeks ago he wanted to talk about it. I assume he just wanted to give us an update, but he's not here. All right, with that, any other business people want to bring up? All right, just a reminder in case you're interested, Charles, who did a demo for us, not last week, but I think the week before on, what was it called? Cloud Shapes. He's going to do another demo of another product of his called Cloud Stream, which I think, again, uses cloud events. I just wanted to share what he's doing with that stuff. He was supposed to do that today, but he had to cancel, so we're going to do that in 2 weeks if you're interested in seeing that. Okay. All right. With that, any last minute agenda items or topics? All right. In that case, we are done. Have a good rest of your week and weekend. Talk to you all later.